from Zakopane slave labor camp is arriving. And he knows that my father was in Zakopane. He doesn't know if he's alive. They didn't see each other at that stage for more than 2 years. So he's waiting. And then when the prisoners come in, he recognizes my father. And both are telling the story of the meeting. Can you imagine, after 2 years, they fall on each other's arms, they hug each other, they cry, they ask what happened to mother, what happened to the sisters. Henrik is saying, we were separated, I don't know what happened to them, they were taken somewhere else, they don't know. And then they swear never to part. They swear they will stay here, and whatever happens, they will stay together. So if they need to die, they will die together. If they will live together. And they work there, and somehow he managed to get my father also to be a barrack builder. So he's assistant barrack builder, because by that stage he's 17 years old or so, and he's an assistant barrack builder. The conditions here are very, very, very difficult. There are deportations all the time, there are shooting all the time. Amon Goeth, the commandant, is extremely cruel. My uncle worked in a barrack one day with a colleague or with a friend next to him, and suddenly a shot was heard and the colleague just fell. So the SS, Amon Goeth particularly, but because the commandant was so cruel, everyone else, there was impunity. You could do anything that you wanted. So his colleague, his friend, just fell. So you didn't know, you really didn't know when you woke up in the morning if you will end the day alive. You really didn't know. It was so uncertain, it was so scary. One day, my father alone was taken with a group of other prisoners to work outside in the fields. You see, all that, of course, now is built, but this was the outskirts of Krakow. It's outside of Krakow. And there were fields here all around. And they were working, and a good Polish farmer left for them food, potatoes, because they were starving. So my father thought, well, his brother is not with him. He needs to get food to his brother. So he took and hid potatoes on his body. And sadly, the Nazis searched when they came back to the camp. And the potatoes were found, and not only on him, a few others had food on them. And as a punishment, and to show and to scare everyone else, they publicly were beaten. They were given 50 lashes publicly with a whip on themselves, on the head, on the back. And my father actually had a sort of bump on his head from those lashes until the day he died. Towards the end of the camp, the Nazis and Amon Goeth wanted to hide what happened really in the camp. Now, I need to go now to the Schindler story and to connect it to the Schindler story. How many of you watched Schindler's List? Okay, so you have memories of the liquidations of the Krakow ghetto, the shooting, the girl with the red dress trying to hide, and then we see mass graves here in Plaszow, mass graves where all those victims and the victims of Plaszow were put in a huge mass grave, and we see then the red dress again in the mass grave. That's from the film. The reality was that there were mass graves, and the Nazis wanted to hide the crime, and they ordered the prisoners. It's in a way Sonderkommandos. We spoke yesterday a lot about Sonderkommandos. So in a way, my father then, for about a week, became a Sonderkommando. He was ordered to take out the bodies and burn them. All they were given was a mask, because I don't need to tell you. And interestingly enough, my uncle said that after a few days, the Germans gave them vodka to drink, because it was so impossible to do what they were doing, and they had a time limit, and they had to do it within few days, that they actually gave them vodka to drink. That is absolutely unbelievable. My father had nightmares about it until the day he died. I remember him screaming at night. I cannot even imagine what he went through. It's unbelievable. Oskar Schindler was here. He had 400 workers in his factory. We were all there. They marched from the factory to here and back to the factory every day. What we did in 15 minutes, 7 kilometers, they had to do every day twice, walking. So we are complaining about the cold, but yeah. So my father is not there because he was in other camps, but he is here in Plaszow. Oskar Schindler that started as a perpetrator. He belonged to the Nazi party. He is from Svitau in the Sudetenland. He's a Nazi. He takes a factory without paying. He uses slave labor, 400. He's a perpetrator. But at one stage, he wakes up. He sees things that he didn't see before, and he sees the cruelty, and he decides to do something about it. And he's behaving better to his prisoners, and he's protecting them, and he's doing a lot of other things. But then he decides, when he hears, first of all, he knows that Plaszow is a terrible place, but he hears that they're going to liquidate the camp and take the prisoners to Auschwitz. And he decides, you know, a lot of us sees terrible things and say, "Oi, terrible, but what can I do about it?" He decides, it's terrible things, I am going to do something about it. And that is the difference between someone like that was not a saint. He was a Catholic, he was married to Emily all his life, he didn't have kids. But, he wasn't a saint. He was a gambler. He had so many mistresses. He was drinking. He was everything. And because maybe that he was like that, maybe that's the reason that not only he saved 400, he could have said, these are 400, these are my people. Something happened. These are 400, I'm going to save these 400.